Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and today I'm going to be tackling the last review of 2023. This time it's going to be a rotted request coming from patron Twan Strong, who wanted me to watch and review the 2020 Oz Perkins film, Gretel and Hansel. Twan says of this pick, I've always wanted to hear your thoughts on this version of this fairy tale. Keep forgetting to ask. While it's fresh, I figured I'd see what you thought of it. Well, I'm glad that I watched it again because, truth be told, I have seen this before about a year or two ago in a watch party setting, and until recently, only time I've ever seen it, and honestly, wasn't a big fan at that moment. But on this repeated viewing, I actually got a lot more out of it, and I'm not exactly entirely sure what changed in me, but it really does kind of show that sometimes our viewing experience is sometimes affected by our viewing setting, our mood, the alignment of the stars, etc. Or it could just simply be that I kind of, at the second viewing, knew what I was getting into, and based on that, was able to just settle in and take the movie in for what it actually was. So this is actually a pretty big problem with me and generally with the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, because I've been burned on this before. I remember hearing of the concept of Terry Gilliam's The Brothers Grimm when it first got announced, way before there was a trailer, way before there was a movie, and I was jazzed. I was so excited to see a dark rendition of fairy tales, and let's just say the movie really didn't quite deliver. And when watching Gretel and Hansel the first time, it was just honestly so slow paced, and maybe that was just watching it within the group watch party setting. It just didn't ever vibe with me. It was a tough one to watch when you're in a group of friends and you have the ability and the inclination to start riffing when things start to slow down a bit too much. But this time I wanted to have a very kind of true and honest watch experience and really evaluate the film for what it was, taking all other exterior elements of expectations and so forth, and just putting those aside for an hour and 27 minutes. Additionally, I also heard that Oz Perkins labeled this as one of the more accurate representations of this fairy tale, and based on that, before I watched this, I went ahead and read the original Brothers Grimm fairy tale to just kind of freshen myself up on the story. It wasn't a big ask. You can read the whole thing in about 5 or 6 minutes. But it gave me a bit of a groundwork to kind of, okay, well, now I understand exactly what the original Brothers Grimm fairy tale story was. Let's see how this actually holds up in comparison to that. And within that adaptation, we do have Gretel and Hansel, two children who are led out into the woods only to come across a house occupied by a witch who may have intentions of the nefarious sort. And I gotta say, despite Oz Perkins' claims, that's about where the comparisons start and stop with this film. There are a lot of differences taking place within this. Maybe it's the more accurate one that's available in cinema history in terms of tone and so forth, and that may be true. But the storyline, the characters, everything about this does deviate quite a bit. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. That just means it's not the most faithful adaptation that it could have been. Instead, this movie takes inspiration from the source text, changes the ages of the characters, makes Gretel the older sister by a wide margin, takes concepts of the parents of the children leading them out into the woods, the father begrudgingly and the mother very willingly, and kind of taking those and shelving them aside. The father is no longer present. The mother is basically just forcing them out. It's a time of pestilence and plague, and everybody's about to starve, so really this is a way to save her own skin by having fewer mouths at the table and potentially saving theirs, but more likely just sending them off to their death. And instead of having the situation in the story of first following the rocks back home and then attempting to follow the breadcrumbs back home on the second round, only to find that the creatures had eaten them, we just have them out into the woods. They are fending for themselves, and they come across not a gingerbread house or a house made of cakes and so forth, but rather just a house that has a bunch of cakes and meats and so forth within it, and it's a good thing they do because they're starving. From there, the differences deviate even further, going from minute changes to the storyline and structure of the ages and so forth, and going into an entirely different movie altogether, with Gretel being taken under the witch's wing and having major storyline and conflict undertones of the obligations that we surround ourselves with and how they counter the potential opportunities that we want to see in front of us.
Even the littlest pebble makes it difficult to travel once it gets its way into your boot. You've taken him on as a burden.
and the millstones that we allow to be wrapped around our necks, even if they are, little brothers. Anyway, so yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit more on this new viewing. And I think, again, it's the situation where I took some of my expectations of what I thought the Brothers Grimm should be, put those aside, and entered into it with a reasonable expectation of what I knew this movie would deliver, which is a very slow-paced, methodical folk horror film. I don't know why I didn't expect that in the first place. I was a big fan of the Oz Perkins film, The Black Coat's Daughter, and I think that kind of fits the same bill of being a very slow-paced, methodical, but ultimately quite effective film. I think I was just expecting something very different out of a fairy tale adaptation. And then taking this for what it was and enjoying the film for what it was trying to deliver, I found that the acting performances also really kind of stood out. Sophia Lillis as Gretel was fantastic in this, but I gotta say, the performance that really blew me away was Alice Krige as the witch, which, okay, quick note here. If somebody could please write in the comments and just correct me, I think I'm pronouncing her name right, but I've been looking it up and for the life of me, I can't find any video clip where she pronounces her own name, but I've heard people in interviews with her standing right next to them calling her Alice Krige, Alice Krige, Alice Krige. I've been able to find the gamut of pronunciations, but I haven't found anybody confirming that it's the right one, specifically her herself. So I'd love to get some correction on that, but regardless, her performance in Gretel and Hansel was fantastic. It was ominous, it was foreboding, it was wise beyond the years, speaking to that ancient folklore, communing with nature, and the evil side of the heart imbued within. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of folk horror, especially slow-paced folk horror. I've seen The Witch multiple times, and although I appreciate it, I don't really enjoy it that much. I know I'm an outlier with that. I'm sorry, Kate, but I gotta say, the second viewing of this one, I thought the atmosphere, the performances, the sound design, everything about it just really clicked into place for me. I'm not gonna say it's the best movie I've ever seen, but I enjoyed it way, way more than I thought I would. I was really bracing myself for, I didn't like it the first time, and now I'm going to watch it without the benefit of friends to laugh with, so this is going to be even slower. And I found it to just not be the case. If anything, it drew me in more, and the methodical pacing just worked in favor of the film. So if you've only seen Gretel and Hansel once and you weren't the biggest fan of it, then maybe do what I did and give it a second watch with the knowledge of the pacing and the tone that the movie is going to be delivering so that you can appreciate the storyline, the characters, and the performances that it also delivers is part of the package. So thank you, Tuan, for recommending this one. I'm glad that I was able to change my mind on it. I always love the ability to do that. And thank you for watching this video out there. If you like this, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next year. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.